Welcome to our very first session of Fridays on the Farm. We're excited to offer this virtual opportunity to our producers. Each Friday, we'll feature a topic from our YouTube channel. Also, it'll be streamed through Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We invite you to join us or come back and watch it at your own convenience. Our first topic this month is going to be on bull selection. So for week one, we're going to start talking about how to get started with selecting the right sire. Selecting the right bull can be one of the biggest investments for your operation this year. So it's important that we slow down and make the right choice. The genetic influences that he brings in can mean major changes for your herd in the future. There are a couple things that we start with. The first thing we want to examine are what are your herd goals? Are you concerned with keeping your calves? Are these going to be replacement heifers that you're going to keep in your herd? Are these calves that you're retaining ownership, so carcass value is important? Or are these calves you're going to sell at their weaning weight or their yearling weight, so growth is your biggest factor? The next thing we want to look at is, what about your herd? Are you running a small herd where you can get away with one bull? Do you have larger herds that you need several bulls? Or do you even have small enough things that AI can be a consideration? Do you have the kind of herd that you want to AI some, but maybe not all? Are you going to need a cleanup bull? These are all factors we've got to slow down and think about. The next thing we have to think about is breed choice. Are you going to go with a seed stock operation where you're keeping the same kind of registered cattle? How much are you checking out EPDs? Do you know what hybrid vigor is? The most popular beef breeds are Black Angus, Beefmaster, Brangus, Charolais, Gelvies, Herefords, Red Angus, and Simmental. Are you interested in one of these? We also have to think about your options to purchase. Are you purchasing from a seed stock producer? Are you traveling to bull sales? Are you going through a regular auction? Are you buying semen from somewhere? Are you raising your own bulls? These are all important things that we have to slow down and think about. So let's talk about each one. Number one, let's talk about the importance. When we look at the genetic factors that these bulls are going to pass along to our herd, not only are we looking at the reproductive performance of those future potential replacement heifers, or even if we're trying to raise future herd sires, what kind of maternal ability are we putting back into those heifers? Even the calves that we plan on selling, what's that growth rate going to be? How effectively are they going to utilize the feed that we're pouring into them? That's our cost. We want to make sure we're getting the most bang for our buck. What kind of body measurements? Do you like larger framed cattle or do you like smaller framed cattle? What kind of longevity are you looking for in a herd sire? Do you want a young bull that you're going to have for several years, or are you looking at swapping bulls out every 2 to 3 years? Are you keeping those calves long term, and is carcass merit going to be a major factor for you? Structural soundness is another major factor for that genetic influence. When you look at your herd goals, lots of different things can be affected depending on what kind of sire you select, depending on what you plan to do with those calves. On weaning growth and yearling growth, you can look at those EPDs for both of those things and figure out what kind of growth trend to expect as you select that herd sire. For retained ownership, there are the same kind of options. If you're looking for carcass value, what kind of marbling are you interested in? When we go to replacement heifers, you can select her maternal traits. What kind of milking ability is she expected to have? Are you looking at raising potential herd sires? Those are all factors that can have a major influence depending on the bull that you choose. Then let's look at what are your herd dynamics. Do you have heifers that we need to select a low birth weight bull or maybe a smaller frame? Or do you have larger mature cows that can handle those larger frame bulls? We would like to stick to one bull for every 25 cows. If you have a smaller herd, AI might be a more reasonably priced option for you. Artificial insemination opens up the world to our producers. And when you look at the cost of a bull and the cost of maintaining him, you might be more price efficient to go with an AI option. Even if you have a larger herd, if you're looking to improve your genetics, sometimes AI can be a better option even if you only choose to AI a handful of your cows, and maybe those are the ones that you start with for potential replacement heifers. If you have a herd larger than 25 cows, maybe you're looking at more bulls. The next thing we need to discuss is your breed choice. And everybody has their own preference. It's like trying to tell you whether you want to drive a Ford truck or a Dodge truck or a GMC truck. But we have things that can help us make that decision. EPDs are also known as expected progeny difference. And this is a statistical value so that we have an idea of what to expect from those bulls in their progeny or their calves. Next week, our whole session will be focused on EPD. So if you have more questions for those, be sure to stay tuned next week. The next thing we talk about in choosing a breed is hybrid vigor. Hybrid vigor is where you get the best of both worlds from crossbreeding systems. The majority of our commercial producers utilize this extremely well. By crossbreeding, lots of times we can get the best of both worlds. This chart is from the UGA extension, from their handout Selecting a Beef Breed, and it gives you an example of some of the things that we can compare and expect to see from different breeds of cattle. Your Angus-Hereford combination is one of the most common hybrid calves that we see today. Those black baldy calves seem to be doing really well at the sale barn, and that's what everybody wants to have. So let's talk about some of the breeds that are the most common in the beef industry. We've got to start with the Black Angus. This is a high growth calf with a medium milking potential. But one of the biggest issues we have with Angus cattle in our part of the world is a low hot climate adaptability. So it's important that if you're raising these cattle that you keep that in mind, that they need more access to shade. They need more access to water sources, and understand what you're getting into with that breed. Beefmaster is another common breed in the beef industry. We do have a few producers here in Hot Spring County. They have high growth potential, and they're also more highly adapted to our hot climate, but they also have a low marbling. So understanding their advantages and disadvantages is really important. The Brangus is a cross between our Brahman and Angus cattle, and these take that high growth rate, but they cross it with the Brahman's high climate. This is an excellent example of where hybrid vigor can be very important for our producers to have options. Next, we'll talk about our Charolais cattle. These are some of our highest growing cattle. They have very high muscling, very high cutability, but again, they're also very low in their hot climate adaptability. Another factor is when you talk about having these high growing cattle and very large cattle is making sure that your cows are ready for that. So if you're raising heifers, this is where that birth weight EPD would be extremely important. Next, we'll talk about Geldies. These have a high growth rate, high milking potential, which could be great if you were looking at keeping your replacement heifers. But again, they have that low climate adaptability. Herefords are another one of the most common breeds here. We have lots of folks that raise Herefords around Hot Spring County. They have high growth potential, but again, they have a low milking potential and a low hot climate adaptability. This is where you see those Herefords crossed with more of a Brahma influenced cattle to try to have it more adapted for Arkansas. The Red Angus is getting to be more common. They have high growth and size, high fleshing adaptability, medium muscling, but also just like the rest of the English cattle, they have a low hot climate adaptability. The Simmental cattle falls in that same group of the low tolerance for our hot climate, but they also have a very high growth rate. So this is where that hybrid vigor can make such a big difference. And when we talk about hybrid vigor, we got to mention our Brahmans. This is what brings that hot climate adaptability to our cattle. And so lots of times you'll see crossed cattle that have a longer ear that they get from this Brahman influence that helps them to handle our part of the world a little bit better. Brahmans have a high growth in size. They have the very high climate adaptability, but they're also very late maturing cattle with a low marbling. And so by crossbreeding these cattle, that gives us the best chances to improve our operations. Now let's talk about where do you start looking to buy them. One of your first stops should always be a seed stock producer. These are farms that raise cattle for bulls. This is a picture from one of our bull producers here in the county of all of his bulls at a feed trough. These seed stock producers can talk you through what to expect. They can utilize what your goals are and help you select the right option. It's important when you find these producers that you find somebody who's reliable enough that you believe what they're telling you. That's where those EPD and registration papers can help a little bit there if you don't already have that relationship built. But it's important when you go to these farms that you talk to that guy and tell them what you're looking for. Tell them what those herd goals are that we talked about earlier. Your next option are bull sales. You have some larger seed stock producers that put on their own sale through their farm. Sometimes you have certain auction houses that'll put on bull sales. Sometimes it's a registry. Depending on what it is, these will be sales set up just for performance bulls. Go and see what they've got. Take a look at their catalog before the sale so you have an idea of what's there before you get there. Go early so you can walk around and look at them in their pens. Traditionally, at the livestock auction, you may see bulls come through. The biggest thing with those is make sure that they have been tested before they come to your herd when you plan on breeding, because in the state of Arkansas, it is legally required that those bulls have a trichomoniasis test before they are put back out on another herd of cattle. Artificial insemination is an option. There's a lot of semen that can be purchased online or through AI magazines and catalogs. Sometimes your AI dealers can also help. They can also put you in touch with somebody who can come out as a technician to artificially inseminate your cattle if you're not comfortable with that. The other option that some of our smaller producers really like is leasing. Again, if you plan on leasing a bull, I strongly recommend that you go the testing route so that you know what you're getting and you know you're not bringing diseases into your herd. And on the same note, if you're leasing out a bull, I strongly recommend that you have him tested before you bring him home. That way you don't bring anything back to your cows. These are all great options, but the important thing is take the time to look. Take the time to understand what you're getting. Make sure that he's the option that reaches your goals. Purchasing your bull can be such a big economic investment for your cattle. It's so important that we choose the right one. For more information, you can check out our publication. It's the MP 502 Bull Selection Management Guide, and it goes in depth into everything we've talked about. We will also continue to use this resource in the next couple of weeks as we continue our discussion on bull selection. Now that you know what your goals are, be sure to tune in next week while we examine EPDs so that we can find the right sire to meet your goals. See you next Friday.